Ex-assistants to rich, powerful people. What's the most messed up behavior you witnessed during your employment? Serious. I had a pro golfer hire me solely to list 90% of his belongings on eBay. Everything from huge TVs to golf club head covers. The odd part was he wanted everything listed for $0.99 and shipped as fast as possible when it inevitably sold. I lost that job when he went to jail for procuring said items with illegally gained funds from his invalid sister's inheritance. I was questioned, but since I had no idea how he got rich, no charges were ever brought up on me. I just thought he was a weird eccentric rich guy that wanted new toys, and I assumed he had invested his pro golf earnings over the years. He was sponsored by Nike after all. Using a my alt account. I work with, or for, this really old guy who is in his 80s. He tells me stories all the time from his past of all the crazy shit he's done there before coming to America and making his fortune here. The country he is from is known for corruption, especially in the past when he was there. He was a son of the influential and rich AF politician. In his teenager years he used to basically do whatever he wanted. Think the devil's double but on a smaller scale. He said girls used to flock to him no matter what because he had money like that. There was this one girl he said didn't give him any chances and he really wanted her. So he took her and threw her into the car, taking her to the middle of the forest before coercing her into having sex. Pretty much fucking rape. The girl's dad found out and he complained to the police. Instead of taking my CEO to jail, they made up a phony charge against the dad and threw him in jail. The dad was forced to drop the charges for his freedom. The police, the judge and any person with influence was in this guy's pocket. That's one of the most fucked up things I ever heard, and he told the story almost as if he's proud of it. I held the corgis while she gave them each a suppository. Posting before I read the comments, but guessing this rates no more than a 3/10 on the messed up scale. I work for a very wealthy family in the commercial real estate market, and the one thing I have noticed is how much they lack a sense of time. They have had people doing everything for them for so long they no longer realize how long it takes to complete a task. One example, hey, take this deposit to bank A, it has to be deposited today. Sir, it's 4:50, they close at 5 o'clock and it is a 25-minute trip one way. The CTO of an IT company I worked for was born into a rich family and didn't know how to talk with his inferiors. He was so bad at human interaction our CEO forced him to go to some kind of class to learn how to interact with humans. This douchebag loved Porsches. He drove a couple to work, and he had one he would race at amateur races occasionally. One day one of our co-workers failed to meet us for lunch because he was broadsided on the way to the restaurant. For some reason after the accident he came back to work. We were standing around his cube and he's telling us about his car getting totaled when the CTO walked up. After hearing the story, the CTO says, and I'm not embellishing, at least it wasn't a Porsche. Then he laughed and walked off. I was briefly an assistant to a CEO of a large company in my country. I live in Northern Europe, and this guy was a real asshole to everyone. I just made coffee, ran with mail and copied things. I say briefly, because I only worked there for 3 weeks. I made an honest mistake, copying the wrong documents, resulting in a brief embarrassment on his side in an in-house meeting with some of the other big guys of the firm. I got called into his office, and knowing his history with previous assistants, I was visibly nervous. He then began absolutely shredding me for 15 minutes, completely red in the head, spit flying in my face as he stood above me, basically ripping me a new one. I started crying. This was my first job, and I was 15 at the time, and he stopped shouting. He took one finger to my chin, lifted my face up so I looked straight at him, and then he said, "You're a nobody. Don't you ever forget that." And then he threw some paperwork at me to let me officially know that I was fired, which I then had to pick up from the floor, and then he yelled at me to get the hell out of his office. TL. Doctor got fired for copying wrong documents. Boss ripped me apart for 15 minutes and made me cry. First job ever. The director of my former company was a nice enough woman, but she used her position to get employees to do everything for her. The head of human resources and finance was required to help manage her personal bank accounts, enroll her children in school, book her holidays, everything. She also had a nanny for her younger kids who was somehow being paid through the company for tax purposes, and so she wouldn't have to outlay the money. I may or may not have carried a coked out girlfriend and a large amount of drugs out of my boss's house, CEO of a very large company, while she was covered in puke and cocaine so his wife wouldn't catch him as she arrived home from her sister's house a day early. Full story. My old boss regularly cheated on his wife with any number of women. Well, he calls me one day, because we are friends away from work, and asks me to come to his apartment ASAP. I drive over there and he's blitzed and this chick is laying naked in her own vomit, maybe his too, mumbling about something. He says he has to shower and clean the vomit up because his wife is 10 minutes away, so please get the cunt out of here. I grab the girl and help her to her feet and cover her up with a shirt. As I'm walking her out he yells for me to grab the party bag. The only bag is a dop kit. I grab it, jump in my car and drive off. This chick is blasted. She doesn't know where she lives and is sure she's having a heart attack. So I calm her down somewhat and reach in her purse and find her ID. Luckily she has her current address on it and I take her home. I drive back to my house and pull into the driveway and remember the dop kit. I open it up and there's a sugar cube sized piece of meth, 3, approx, grams of kind bud, and what has to be an 8 ball of cocaine. Someone who isn't me smoked the bud but sold, at way below market value, the meth and the cocaine. I got a steak dinner and a few beers later that week from the boss. Needless to say, I no longer work there. I became friends with a colleague, a delightfully wealthy man and a minor member of European royalty. He wore bespoke suits on his time off, like, he specifically had them made for lounging. He had a £12,000 walking suit. He was very kind and affable, however out of touch with reality he was. I taught him how to order pints at the pub. The first time I showed him how to do it, he didn't have money because he never carried a wallet. He was in his 40s and led an active social life, but always had a servant on hand to do everything. I interned at a production company. The CEO made me go get a new BlackBerry for him. Took 4 hours to go downtown because it had to be bought in downtown LA for whatever reason. When I brought it back, he opened the plastic, turned it on, and asked what the fuck is this? Why aren't my numbers on it? Well, it's brand new, you haven't updated it yet. This is useless. What the fuck have you been doing for 4 hours? Well I was. Smash. And he threw it on the ground. Literally. Just smashed it. Fucking useless. I was flabbergasted. I used to be the assistant of a celebrity photographer in New York City. Mostly hip hop celebrities and New York nightlife. This guy fucked so many women behind his wife's back, it was obscene. Once there was this model who needed portraits taken, but my boss was fucking her and his wife was suspicious. So he had me take the pictures instead. Except he drove me there with his wife, but had to drop me off across town so his wife wouldn't know where I was going. Had to walk 20 blocks to get to the model's apartment. Also, if we worked until 3 AM, which was common, I would have to crash at his place or else I would have to sit in Penn Station for hours until the first NJ transit train. He made me sleep on the floor. Even though he had a couch, I had to sleep on the floor. Everyone involved in the Nick upper class are bastards. Bastard coated bastards with bastard filling, just waiting to fuck you over. My ex-GF's little sister was dating and is now married to a rich older guy, much older. I heard some tearful confessions about how she was forced to have threesomes with him and prostitutes etc. Also, she used to babysit for his kids and they started dating when she was about 15 and he was closer to 50. I wasn't exactly an assistant but a concierge. Rich guy drove his car up onto the sidewalk in front of the building and ended up with a DUI. A couple months later he asked me to start his car for him by blowing into a breathalyzer ignition after he spent the evening across the street at a bar. I declined. The one that made me the most mad was two very well-off families in the building, lawyers and consultants. They were neighbors and best friends. Extremely conservative and active and trying to deny any kind of social services in the city and state. 4 PM was cocktail hour as they called it. They would load up on all sorts of prescription drugs and sit in the lobby bragging about how high they were. They had no shame about hiding it. They would talk about how disgusting it was that pot was being legalized and how it was going to ruin their neighborhood. Sometimes if the husband lawyer was really far gone, he would loudly discuss his client's cases in front of everyone. Then their prep school kids would arrive home and everyone would head out to the most expensive restaurant in the neighborhood. Other than that, there was a lot of general entitlement, shacking up with people who aren't their spouses in the building's swimming pool, etc. I didn't work, but was good friends, and still am, with this kid whose mother was an executive for a big gaming company. Basically she would attend PAX East, pretty big gaming convention, every year and with such would give her kids tickets for themselves and their friends. I wasn't one of those friends that year, but I got tickets for Christmas and we still went together, and oh my god, Arthur's mother did literally send shivers down my spine. When we went to the booth where she was at, that year she was advertising a new game. I don't think it ever hit off. If it did, I don't remember the name of the game then. When she saw me and her son get to little show floor, she pushed every kid out of the way so that we could be first in line and actually got a kid kicked out for throwing a fit about it. I wanted to say something, but my parents had paid $50 for me to get to the convention and I wasn't looking to get kicked out before even being there for an hour. She was a nice lady though. She was able to get basically a few of everything that the popular exhibits were handing out. Hats, shirts, wristbands, coupon codes. CEO boss lady was built like a linebacker. I'm 115 pounds wet and small. When I had a seizure in the office, don't have to mention that it was stress related. Her demeanor, devil wears Prada without the earned respect in the industry to somewhat justify its inhumanity. She climbed on top of me and shoved a stapler in my mouth so I would not bite my tongue. Didn't get off when a nurse told her she was making it worse. Had to be pulled off by fire and EMS. I mean, she cared, right? I used to work for a company hosting luxury car driving events, where the customers came for a week or a weekend to learn to drive the latest models on ice. Most of the customers were polite or even nice, but whenever we hosted the Russian groups, everyone knew all bets were off. These guys had never heard a no that couldn't be turned into a yes with a wad of cash. The most memorable incident was when two of them flew in 3, assumed, Russian prostitutes for a gangbang, and had their driver drop said prostitutes off at the airport the next morning just before picking up these guys' wives from the same airport. I was told by the cleaning staff that the room they'd used was covered in blood and shit amongst other things. My first job was being an assistant to the CEO of a small warehouse-based wholesaler operated as a pet project of a very rich man. The owner had a 5-year-old toddler at the time, and calling the kid spoiled would be like referring to the Pacific Ocean as moderately damp. This was one of those situations where it was crystal clear the kid had never, ever been told no to anything or had any sort of discipline. For some inexplicable reason, the owner would bring him to work almost every day and let him run free. As the warehouse and accompanying offices were one large interconnected building, this often meant there'd be this toddler running around either breaking things, unpacking boxes, and generally making the entire warehouse staff's job a ton more harrowing than they should have been, as it was quite clear that making the kid angry in any way would result in the culprit losing their job, which did happen at least once during my time there. When I wasn't refilling the coffee pot, Xeroxing, or running Cat5 cable, the vast majority of my time was spent trying to keep the kid away from the shipping conveyor and the other places in the building that could deliver a quick and painful death to the unwary. TL. Dr. Rich Boss bringing spoiled kid to work daily is the worst thing ever. He wasn't super rich and powerful, but I used to work for a pretty reputable set of attorneys a few years ago. I started off file clerk and went up to receptionist. Anyways, one of the attorneys specifically just did not give a shit about his kids whatsoever. He didn't know their ages or their birthdays. He would have the office manager mark down all these things on her own personal calendar so that she could prepare gifts and whatnot for their birthdays. She even had her paying all their bills and rents, some were in college, with his checks. One of his stepdaughters worked there for many years and he would sometimes forget about her and leave her in the office alone. She would have to call just to get picked up. The attorney was a pretty shitty guy, but his complete lack of interest or care in his children's lives always disturbed me. I worked for a psychiatrist. We had some VIP clients. One client was the gay lover for an old man. The old man's family happened to be the family that owns one of the major pharmaceutical companies. The story went that the rich man took a liking to this lover of his while he was in his 30s and the kid was in his, well, 13 or some such. The rich guy just buys the kid from the family to be his lover. It was in the late 70s or 80s. I worked with them, let's just say later. Their lifestyle was sort of like this: take private jet to France, rent 5-star hotel penthouse, party like hell for a few days. Take private jet to Rome, rent penthouse, party like hell for a few days. You get the drift. Had some other interesting cases too. Safe to say same rules don't apply to the super wealthy as us regular mortals. Not an assistant per se, but I did have a short-term IT contract gig at an investment firm of some kind. Small business, huge money. Don't think anyone there wasn't some 3-letter job title millionaire. Got to observe some bizarre stuff. Most of the offices, for the upper up, actually they all seem to be upper ups, had private bathroom. If someone was out for a meeting or whatever offsite, multiple people would intentionally take the nastiest shits in that person's private bathroom, and not like one person, like 6 or 7 in series, performing some kind of pre-planned unholy train of battle shits of war, stench and destruction. Seriously, they timed this. Giggling like a bunch of prep school teenagers in suits that cost more than my paycheck. And the fucked up part, it was like a routine thing around there. Everyone was doing it to everyone else. Guy would come back, find his private throne closet reacting a death and colonic waste demons hanging thick enough in the air you could distort visible light, and be laughing their asses off lol. Oh, you guys got me. Haha. Got em good this time. What made it more unsettling was there seemed to be a kind of etiquette system built into the activity too. Apparently if someone was actually mad at you, they'd skip flushing, or run hot water to add extra steam, and half the time the victim could accurately name the last person who'd attacked the bathroom. So, I will delve into the realm of public knowledge of what happened while I was working for a couple generals. I was a driver, which basically meant that I was responsible for a whole host of things besides actually driving them, from getting them food 3 times per day, making sure their personal quarters were clean while deployed, laundry, dry cleaning, and making sure that their uniforms were properly put together. One of the generals that I had the pleasure of working with was a terrible person. He had a long-running affair with his wife with a subordinate female officer that became very public. During the course of this affair, she persuaded him to fire people for no reason. He used government money for travel to see her. She would write emails from his account to accomplish her bidding, and so much more. Used his rank to coerce female subordinates to send him nude photos. General number 2 was reprimanded for writing an inappropriate email, but was otherwise a good guy. General number 3 was a really good person, and the worst I've seen him do is pour something from a flask into his coffee before a Monday morning meeting. Edit. It was not General Petralius or McChrystal for General number 2. It was someone that held a position that they both had held previously. I used to work as a private chef for a billionaire, living in Paris. He is actually a very nice and down-to-earth guy, treated everybody very well and was just a normal guy that had a lot of money. One time we were at his private villa in southern France with 3 of his, also very rich, buddies. They flew in by helicopter, some 10-12 smoking hot Russian models that stayed at the house and partied for 5 days. Lots of partying with really good and expensive food and drinks, cocaine, etc. At the end of the week he had fucked every one of the Russian girls. I've worked for a lot of really rich people and would say that this is nothing unusual. I worked at a Jewish country club in Boynton Beach, FL, called Hunter's Run. Nastiest people you could ever meet. Granted, there were a few gems, but 90% were self-important pricks, women worse than men for whatever reason. They would talk bad about me right in front of me as if I wasn't standing there. I worked a golf job that was usually a job you get tips, Normally you get compensated more hourly if you're not getting tips. Not the case. Members were known to rat out any member they saw giving a tip and then that employee would be fired. I witnessed a murder while bodyguarding Nas back in 2002 in a decent neighborhood in the Bronx after a bar mitzvah he performed at. Not even kidding. 3 white dudes were popping off over an oxy deal gone bad, come to find out, and just start slamming toasters right in front of our tour bus. We about all shit ourselves and hit the deck. Fucking pills and blood everywhere, just scattered like chiclets on a scarlet and black top field under the neon lights of the city, and 3 dead guys. I worked for a guy who was old money. He was a waste of space. He couldn't load a stapler. He didn't bring a knife for his bread, so he stole a co-worker's scissors. I got him lunch once. He was upset I didn't get his half Dr. Pepper half Sprite. Like I should have divined that. But he'd throw temper tantrums. I remember I set him up a 3-day itinerary. Just this gorgeous setup, multiple page folder, every event by the hour. He loses it. Left it in the rental car to the airport. So I had to anticipate 12 calls over the next 3 days to tell him where to go. He couldn't figure out email on the road. There were a few times he had to hand me over to a hotel clerk or registrar for an event because he couldn't follow my instructions. He was flipping out on me the whole time. He wanted me to overnight him another itinerary for $120 or so on the last day. I explained the situation and the price. The last day was drop car, take flight. So I did. Then he bitched I mailed it to him. I had a role that was nominally professional in a firm which was, and is, one of the UK's largest suppliers of household goods. More and more I got diverted into special transactions and when I jabbed at it, was initially threatened then fired. The owner of the business, a gentleman from a foreign nation where it's still culturally 1949, was using the business to pay for his entire personal life, all his holidays, the apartment and care of his bigamous second wife and family, and major bribes to leading political figures in his homeland. Can't say too much as case pending, but I understand half the board of directors of the firm that nominally employed me are now facing jail. I talked to the authorities after they fired me. I also forwarded all the evidence to the ambassador of his home country. If they act on it, he's in shit so deep it can hardly be comprehended. Worked IT for a small company. The boss was Mormon and so every 9 months there was another kid running around. One day he called me at home to drive across town and help him with his home network for some under the table money. The neighborhood was gated and the guard was looking so far down his nose at my 1986 Civic that I thought his neck would break. The house was huge, but I knew something was wrong the moment I walked in the door. I have never seen such filth. I had no idea people could live like that. The maid hasn't come yet. Sorry for the mess. Yes, that man just said they use a maid service, so this was likely just a single week's worth of shit. The high chairs in the dining area were absolutely surrounded by garbage and food, dirty clothes everywhere, etc. I guess when you have money you don't even need to clean your room anymore. I drive a limousine, often for wealthy clients. My least favorite are the children. One of my spoiled trust fund clients once insisted on picking up 4 friends from different areas of town. He convinces these people to go to the bar with him, but when we get there he kicks them out and has me drive him to the airport where he picks up a last-minute flight to Vegas. I'm an aircraft mechanic, A&P, and I used to work on the Gulfstream jet owned by a very big multinational corporation used exclusively by the CEO. At the time I was there, the CEO they had was a little odd. Keep in mind this thing costs tens of thousands of dollars an hour to operate when you divide acquisition costs, maintenance, fuel, and crew salaries with the number of hours flown. He would have 3 meals brought on board for himself, so he could choose what to eat in flight. Maybe steak, instead of lobster today. But he would order a tray of sandwiches for the crew or non-VIP passengers, like his assistant. If the flight was less than 1 hour, he would forbid the crew and passengers from using the lavatory to save the pump out fee. A pilot once violated this because really had to go and was fired. He would sit in the back so he could watch the other passengers and make sure they continued working instead of looking out the windows on company time, even VPs. And my favorite, because it affected me, when he arrived for a flight, all maintenance personnel had to literally hide in tool storage until he was on board and out of our line of sight, because the mere sight of maintenance people made him nervous about flying. Also, I met a contractor there who used to work on Oprah's plane and he said she was a super cunt. My first job was working for my dad doing construction on a private estate for an investment broker. He told me stories of clients walking in and putting briefcases full of money on his desk after they'd won lotteries or got inheritances saying I'm rich. Keep me rich. He always had us doing the most obnoxiously silly stuff to his house, which included digging up an outdoor brick oven from his yard in order to use the bricks to build a fire pit on his back porch. His pool was always filled with dead frogs because he wouldn't clean it himself, and he didn't even want to go in his backyard because an employee shot himself there after being fired by him. Of course, he was easily over 350 pounds and spent all day in a bathrobe except when he had clients coming over. His office was in his house. Guy liked to be comfy and had a full bar despite being a recovered alcoholic. Of course, the bar was only for those same clients. Never actually saw him take anybody into that office. He had a pseudo wrestling match with me once because he found out I wrestled in high school and wanted to be a dick. I was 145 pounds. Got tossed like a rag doll. His catchphrase, well, that's just great. Thanks for watching, and don't forget to like and subscribe.